I'm Dutch Merrick, reporting with the Zeitgeist Movement on the rooftop of the Federal, a popular club here in North Hollywood, California. You see from the backdrop, we've got palm trees, hotels, and a flag. But behind the camera, what you can't see is there's pretty much what kids would call a raging party, or at least kids my age. There's probably 150, 200 people here on this rooftop bar, all sharing their ideas about the Zeitgeist movement and sustainability and the future of our economic and political and social models. What brings us here today? I want to introduce
Brandon Kristy.
And also with us is...
Hi, I'm Jason Lord.
Brandon Kristen is a coordinator for Los Angeles, is that correct? For the Zeitgeist Movement. Jason Lord is the coordinator for the entire state of California. So these guys have their finger on the pulse of what's going on in the Zeitgeist Movement. Brandon, would you give us a sense of how many people are involved in your local movement?
Local movement would be around 1,500 people, 1,000 people actually registered on sites, I would say, and then about 500 people, receiving emails and information, and I'd say about 30 people roughly coordinating events and activism on a consistent basis.
Well, considering the city of Los Angeles and the level of apathy there is, that's a pretty big turnout, I would say.
Yeah, it's very positive to see.
What are some of the events you've been able to hold locally, some of the activities you've been able to do with local volunteers?
We do these monthly, we try to do some town halls every now and then, and we do these huge events, these Zeitgeist Day events and media festival events where we enroll the whole chapter and try and really rally the chapter around these events to really get into the public in different ways. Our media festival event is a music and art event, and then the Zday event is a lecture event where we really drive home a lot of the subjects that we always talk about in a very formal, focused environment.
Now, speaking of subjects that you talk about, Jason, can you illuminate people that are maybe new to the movement some of the core principles of the Zeitgeist movement?
Sure. Some of the foundational things that we talk about, I hate to use the word sustainability because it means too many different things, but we're trying to identify, we are identifying the root causes to ongoing persistent social problems, and that's a long list between crime and poverty and warfare and everything from low reading level and to everything to pollution outputs, and trying to identify that there is a root cause systemic attribute to all of these problems. They're actually not isolated. They're not individual phenomena. They're related, and they're related to the structure of the socioeconomic system that we live inside of. So a lot of people will look at a single problem and focus on that as the problem, whereas they're related to the system structure, how we've got a monetary system based on competition, and we have to fight with each other to pull dollars out of a monetary system in order to survive. And then actually when you look at what science has produced, it shows how we actually can cooperate, and that when you change the environment that a person lives inside of, that our behavior changes to reflect that environment. And so that comes into the questions of design and how you actually have an environment where people can collaborate, cooperate, have their needs met, meeting people's needs, and not just for a group, but for everybody. And that's where the Zeitgeist movement's coming in to try to address this the cultural value, basically, where people think that we are living in the pinnacle of social organization. And there's actually quite a few different ways we can, but we want to have a society that's based on a physical referent, which goes back to what is the physical system that supports our life capacity, and that's the Earth. And we have a limited number of resources. We have a finite environment, and we have the skills, the knowledge, the method, the scientific method, and the technology to actually live sustainably, and not just as a few people, but for everybody inside of this environment, and to apply what we know, which would be through a systems approach, is the technical term, to create an access abundance for the world's people and meet people's needs, and our environment and our behavior will change in reflection to that.
Now, two of the words that you brought up that resonated with me were cooperation and collaboration. And when I grew up, those were good things, and now when I hear about those, they seem to be reframed as communism or socialism or one of the many isms that are taboo in Western society, which seems ridiculous at this point. It seems that we're all on one boat, and that boat is headed toward the edge of the waterfall, if you will, and we've all got to start rowing in the same direction and working together. Do you have a sense, as generally the corporate media pits us against one another and gives us a sense that we're all out for ourselves and we're out to get the other guy? How do we encourage people to understand that we're actually in this together and that we need to have some empathy, that we're actually hardwired for empathy with one another? How do we encourage that in people at the individual level?
Well, that's a big question. That's like, how do you change the meaning of life? But ultimately, the access to creating a difference in your society and around the people that you come in contact with is understanding this information for yourself, and not just agreeing with it, like being being a casual observer, but to actually understand what it means to have a respect for the environment and what it means to be sustainable and what the potentials are for our technology and what we're able to apply to increase our need output, if that makes any sense. And to understand this information and to re-communicate it to the people around you, to find a way to find a parallel value where you can take this information and talk to somebody else about it so they start to consider it. And the best thing we can do is basically plant seeds at this point. And by getting people to actually ponder the system that they live in and understand that it might not be the only thing that they can do, and rather than suffering the ongoing grind of this socioeconomic system where we all tighten our belts and poverty gets a little bit worse and employment gets a little bit worse and
1% get richer.
Yes, and the wealth in the system accumulates towards the top, and understand it as inherent to the structure of the system that we live in, rather than that 1%'s evil. It's not the 1%, it's the 100%. We are all living on the planet together as human beings. So the integrity of yourself is related to the integrity of the system around you. And if it sucks for everybody else, eventually that's going to catch up with you. Yeah, it's going to suck for you. Eventually. I mean, right now, if you're up there at the top of the pyramid, you can kind of live high on the hog for a while, but it's not sustainable even for the 1%. And eventually they're going to come around to that realization, either through just seeing it not work for too many people or just coming across the information on their own. And of course, I hope for the latter, but we'll see.
Now, Brandon, with corporate America, and it's even a broader term because they're multinational companies. These corporations don't have a base in a single country. We know that they don't hold any loyalty toward a single country. With the corporate structure as embedded as it is in politics and in our social life and our drive to consume, our drive to out-consume our neighbor, with that as an overall theme, what still gives you hope to push forth with the Zeitgeist movement?
Well, it's ultimately a cultural thing that we're dealing with here. So, yes, there are corporate there's corporate influence at every turn. There's business influence, and that's ultimately, as I see it, a cultural issue. So your question is, what inspires me to push forward regardless of that?
What gives you hope in this circumstance?
Well, just, I guess, the general sense of people actually, I get a general sense as just walking around in daily life that there's a lot of people that do care, and that there's a lot of people there's countless organizations out there trying to do something. And we all laugh, we all have friends, we all have family, and like to have free time and enjoy our lives ultimately at the base level. And I think we all really we all have mostly commonalities between us, more than, as much as there's a dominant business, behavioral thing going on, what gives me hope is that we only share commonalities in the end of the day. So,
and I want to share with our viewing audience from the Zeitgeist Films, two of the people that have been interviewed in the films, Dr. Gabor Mate and Dr. Robert Sapolsky. I think he's a doctor. He's a professor at Stanford, I think. And since I was introduced to them with the Zeitgeist Films, I've tried to absorb their writings and interviews and YouTube. And it's well worth your time to go to the interweb, that we'll call it, We're going to come up with a new term because internet's out of vogue. No, it's well worth your time to search for. You can get college lectures from Robert Sapolsky, and you can get many interviews with Gabor Mate. Those are just two of the names. Michael Parenti is a good example of very out-of-the-box thinking, but it's worth your time to research on your own and further your own education. There's not a college course available in America that's going to teach you out-of-the-box thinking. Our school system, our education is designed to get us thinking in the systems that they are, the medical system, the legal system, corporate business systems, are designed to self-perpetuate. So if we're going to get beyond these embedded systems, it's up to us to do our own education, our own research, and the voices are out there.